Hello and welcome. It's great to have you here. We're streaming on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and LinkedIn this morning. If you're a marketer or an entrepreneur who is determined to tell a story that sells, then boy, I've got a treat for you today. We're going to talk about how you can generate demand and accelerate sales pipeline with storytelling. That's right. We're going to teach you how to do this without having to learn any specialist, confusing entertainment frameworks. Sounds pretty good, right? And you know what I mean. We won't be talking about the hero's journey. Well, we'll talk about it, but we're not going to teach it. Or the 7 types of story, Kurt Vonnegut's 8 tips, Pixar's tips. You get the point. You know that great storytelling can help your business, but it's hard to find the time to become a master storyteller. Am I right? It's not your fault. Most of the storytelling advice out there is entertainment storytelling. You simply don't have time to become a master storyteller, but you do want to benefit from it. What if I could help you by telling you there's one single thing you could do that would help with all of that? That single thing is business storytelling. My goal for this presentation is to help 2 types of people with business storytelling. So for the natural born storytellers here today, we will show you how to take your whole company on the storytelling journey, resulting in increasing profitability with business storytelling. For those of you who are utterly new to business storytelling, you will get simple frameworks to get going with business storytelling today. So really awesome. So excited to be talking about this. In the next 60 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that business storytelling is the key to unlock unrealized business profitability. I'm going to show you my proprietary frameworks that will make it simple for you to achieve that result. As a marketer and entrepreneur myself, I know how much frustration there can be in business. For over 20 years in corporate America, I held a variety of marketing roles. I was even chief storyteller for a business division of Microsoft. For years, and even as a passionate storyteller, I struggled to apply storytelling in business. There's so much you have to manage in business. You might not feel like you have time for storytelling. We're going to change that today. You also might think that you need to be focusing on every single marketing channel for fear that you will fail if you don't check all the marketing boxes, or that you have to get on the latest social media platform. You don't. What you need to do and what you need to get right is your business storytelling. Like many of you, I once thought that storytelling was reserved for movies, books, and theater. And while I've always appreciated good storytelling, my career was built through science and technology, and I didn't think that stories had much to do with those fields at all. However, I did come to learn that storytelling propped up everything in business, for every business, in every industry. My mother was a scientist, a biologist focused on virology and zoology. She taught my sisters and me to ask questions, develop hypotheses, and to test our ideas. We were taught to seek facts, data, and truth. She was also a poet and an author. My father reinforced this, an electrical engineer who enjoyed sales and marketing, and his career spanned over 5 decades in high tech, of which he inadvertently indoctrinated me into, Intel specifically. I grew up surrounded by tales of Silicon Valley. I highly recommend Accidental Empires. It's a fun read. We were soaked in story from a young age. Both of my parents read to us voraciously. I still have fond memories of being curled up with my dad and one of my sisters on the couch as he read Lord of the Rings to us. This is the actual copy, my mum's 1969 edition, the first time all of the books were published together. And so I took that passion for science and technology, followed my mother's footsteps into creative writing, my father's footsteps into the tech business when I started my career in Intel's marketing department. Any fans of Red Dwarf in the audience? This is a 2002 shot from an Intel Counter-Strike event in London at the Science Museum that I helped manage. And yes, that is Lister from Red Dwarf. In the early days of my career, storytelling mostly seemed relegated to presentations and ad campaigns. I didn't explicitly see it as being something to use in internal business communications or as a problem-solving tool. Something else I discovered in those early days was Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, a popular read at Intel. I loved how it framed the chasm, how businesses that failed to connect with the early majority would fall into this chasm. It became a North Star for me. If a business is nothing else, it's about connecting your product with the most lucrative of your potential markets, the early majority. Storytelling is about connecting people to ideas. You can probably see the connection, right? In one early instance in my career, I created a superhero theme for a partner account manager training event at Intel. In another, I created a James Bond style sales campaign. This was from Microsoft. Eventually, efforts such as these led to me being recruited as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics, just as I was planning on leaving the company. Wow, I thought, it was all official. I was actually going to get paid to be a storyteller. Finishing my novels couldn't wait. Little did I realize that the journey I was about to embark on would result in me being able to help others unlock a big business secret. At Intel, a mentor and friend of mine, Nick Drew, once said, "Always find if someone's done it before, it'll save you time and energy. In other words, don't reinvent the wheel if you can avoid doing so." I've always kept that in mind, and as such, kept an eye out for existing approaches that I could leverage in my work. As a newly minted chief storyteller, I sought to do the same. In this role, I went on the hunt for existing wheels. But honestly, I struggled. I turned down an external job offer to take this role. I had to make it work. And besides, I wanted to. People have been trying to apply storytelling to cross the chasm in business for years, but there was a problem with how people were trying to approach it. Now, to be clear, there is some really interesting advice out there that uses storytelling. For example, I found tons of fascinating information on frameworks for storytelling, born out of hundreds of years of story crafting in literature and the movie industries. Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, to name but one famous framework. In my exploration, I also found some really useful approaches, for example, to help improving presentations. I love Nancy Duart's Resonate and techniques like Bo Eason's for telling your personal story for impact. And as I dug into these methods of classic storytelling models, I just couldn't find the wheel that I was looking for. The available storytelling frameworks have been created for a different goal: entertainment, right? The hero's journey can be 10, 12, or even a whopping 17 steps. Phrases like rising and falling action, character arc, these were just too much of a heavy lift for busy business professionals. No matter how many rabbit holes I went down, I just couldn't find a storytelling wheel that really worked for the repeatable application of storytelling in business. As Chip and Dan Heath explain in their wonderful book, Made to Stick, we're all subject to the curse of knowledge. This curse makes it hard for people outside of our area of expertise to understand what we simply just get. What's effortless for us requires a lot of energy for a non-expert. Turns out storytelling is no different. The wheels just weren't rolling. So I decided to focus on the essence of storytelling. I would use entertainment frameworks and be a story interpreter. A focus on outside-in customer centricity. A focus on the customer as the hero on the journey to hopefully buy from us. My team and I created some wonderful customer showcase films that focused on the customer and their experience. This only reinforced for me how powerful storytelling was. I was discovering more than ever that the power of story wasn't limited to movies and books. This was how we as humans connected. And since business is still fundamentally human to human, I realized that storytelling played an essential role in internal and external business connections and business communication. I was experiencing storytelling's impact on business, but I felt like I was only just scratching the surface, and I wanted to go further than merely injecting elements of story into traditional marketing models. So I started to wonder what actual business storytelling wheels might look like. And I was inspired to take my experience outside of my corporate role and start my own company, to put all my energy into helping businesses with storytelling. But I had a young family at home, and my wife was on a sabbatical from her career. after the birth of our second child. Quitting wasn't an option. Everything changed on July the 19th, 2015. Tragedy struck. I received a phone call that nobody ever wants to receive. My parents had been killed in a car crash. It took a long time to come to terms with this and to heal. And I won't go any further into this sad tale, but if you've ever experienced something like this, I do have a bunch of resources, so don't hesitate to reach out. The fact that life is short was never more important to me. And against this backdrop of profound grief, I left Microsoft. What on earth was I thinking? I tapped into the inner resources that had been gifted to me by my mother and father: creativity, technology, love of storytelling, and I honored them in the best way I knew how, helping others find success in their business with the power of storytelling. That's why I formed Go Narrative. I started working on those business storytelling wheels so you don't have to. It's true that I founded Go Narrative as a way to help businesses use the power of storytelling. Marketers and entrepreneurs are a creative bunch, and I know that when you use our frameworks, you can create amazing stories, amazing content, and amazing customer engagements. The problem with being driven and creative as a marketer or an entrepreneur is that it can result in a mix of check every box syndrome and also the bright, shiny object syndrome. Trust me, that last one in particular is one that I suffer from myself. The truth is, you don't need to check every marketing box, including the latest fancy social media channels. What you need is better storytelling. A big misconception of storytelling is that it's just for children, movies, and books. It's not. Those are just artifacts of what storytelling is really all about. And if some artifacts can be for pure entertainment, some can be for business engagement. When you apply storytelling, your messaging is better, your executives are more relatable, your salespeople have increased confidence, and you generate increased demand and accelerate your sales pipe velocity. And everything is more aligned. Sounds good, right? I had seen this power and I wanted to spread the word. But honestly, I found the entertainment frameworks pretty hard to apply to business, and I want to save you that hassle. Because of this, and even after the initial founding of Go Narrative, I relied on those existing frameworks. And as I worked to decode storytelling for business, I prioritized the concept of a strategic messaging foundation, using my experience creating value propositions, positioning, personas, customer journeys, and content marketing. But the business storytelling was still the crown jewel that I was pursuing. Literature and film benefited from the hero's journey or Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, but these are just artifacts of what storytelling really is. I knew it was so much more than that. I was determined to find an approach that worked in business. I knew storytelling was how we made sense of the world, and quite frankly, we all want our customers to make sense of us, don't we? But without simple, practical business frameworks, I continue to play the role of interpreter. And the more I practice the art and science of storytelling, the more I realize storytelling is a value problem. And business is all about value, right? For our ancestors, the stories of value were told around the campfire. Value was things like which berries were edible and where the shelter was. Evolution did its thing and rewarded survival of the tribes that practiced storytelling. Now, there are a few important things people get wrong with business storytelling, so let's have a look at those. I discovered two cardinal sins. The first sin is not including people and their transformation. This holds true even when the story is short-form content, like a tweet or ad copy. I thought back to a time in my corporate America experience, and I was sitting in this crowd of employees, and this executive was taking the stage in this corporate all-hands meeting. "We have a great story," they called out. The crowd was buzzing. This executive had just been promoted to CMO, and the all-hands was his moment. "I'll tell you what it is." The crowd leaned in. "Our products work great together, and our new SKUs and pricing are exactly what our customers need." What? I waited for a story. Nothing. This was a CMO. There was no story. The presentation wasn't structured around a story. There were a few anecdotes. That was it. And this was only one example of where I was seeing the term storytelling being abused. It was a product strategy, a marketing priority, not a story. Focus on logic and argument, and you inspire your audience to argue with you. Stories are about people. and their overcoming of obstacles and their transformation. This is the why of storytelling. What's that second sin? Well, the second sin is not including a what, an element of value. It's the whole point of storytelling, to deliver valuable information that people can act on, the head and the heart. When you do this, your audience can act on the transformation to lead them to a better life. And they see that simulated for the first time in a story. When we hear a story, we actually simulate events in our minds. It teaches us how to create similar real-world experiences. It shows us how life can be better. I love this quote from Jonathan Gottschall. Fiction is an ancient virtual reality technology that specializes in simulating human problems. But I was struggling to apply the common storytelling entertainment structures to business. So I continued to play this role of interpreter while focusing on the work of crafting strategic messaging foundations. But the dream was real. What if I could forge story frameworks specifically for business people? My mother's earliest memory was of her grandfather, my great-grandfather, taking her and her sisters down into his smithy. He's a blacksmith, and the pain of death should they tell their mother. She would not have been happy. My mother was only 5 years old. My great-grandfather helped them lift the hammer and crash it down onto the hot metal, thrust it into the water, back into the fire, and hammering it again. Sparks filled the smoke-filled air, and the horseshoe was ultimately forged and tempered into something much stronger. Forging takes work, and it was through this experience that I forged these frameworks, so that you don't have to. I now found myself on a mission to find a way to simplify and unlock storytelling for business, and to do so that was really accessible for you. And I managed to do it. I created a set of tools to enable business people to find success through storytelling. And here's the kicker: without relying on entertainment frameworks. Simple, accessible, and memorable. Memorizing a bunch of detail can be a heavy lift. It reminds me of my computer science and business degree. There's a fair amount of memorizing there, like marketing, the things like 4Ps and cash cows. And to be fair, there was a lot that we had to learn. Maybe you've been there too. We have to remember and recall so many things to be successful. We all have all those plates to spin, right? Having to keep all those plates spinning can be tricky. Every time Twitter releases a new feature, I get anxious about not jumping on the bandwagon fast enough. And for ages, I tried to even maintain a Go Narrative Instagram account before I cut my losses and decided to focus on Twitter and LinkedIn instead. And of course, there's a constant flow of channels. Recently, TikTok and Clubhouse, just to name a few. The reality is that no matter the medium, the message needs to use storytelling to be effective. For the first few years of Go Narrative, I relied on my story interpreter role to help our clients. It was then that I discovered Paul Smith's tools. I started using Paul Smith's CAR framework, context, action, and results, from Lead with a Story. CAR helped me bridge the mental gymnastics of entertainment frameworks with business. One of our first clients was a major financial services firm, and CAR was one of the tools that I used to help craft the sales deck that we were hired to create. I liked CAR, but it wasn't quite enough. With Paul Smith, however, I had found the first story structure not explicitly tied to an entertainment story framework. But it wasn't quite what I was after. It did, however, crystallize for me and inspire me to forge ahead with crystallizing my processes and frameworks. In the end, my realization was actually quite simple. Stories are like salt. Salt is elemental. Without it, food is bland. Some people even think watermelon's better with salt. And you want your message to be tasty, don't you? Stories make everything better. I needed a tool as simple as salt, something that anyone can add to their marketing dishes. And you know what? None of these tools or channels or features matter if they're not tasty, and storytelling is an essential element you can sprinkle on just like salt. Don't prioritize the channels. Prioritize storytelling, then the channels. Now, some of you may be thinking, too much salt is a bad thing. Yes, it is. And that's the problem with entertainment storytelling frameworks in business. It's just too much salt. To avoid that, I prioritize a focus on three things. Focus on the customer as a hero, using personas to help with that. Demonstrate the overcoming of challenges that those people or personas had, and to focus less on products and services and more on the people whose lives products impact. If you do nothing else, do this. Please. This focus, along with my storytelling interpreter role, were used initially for sales presentations, websites, and other content such as these examples. Before we knew it, we were creating strategic narratives as a part of our strategic messaging foundation and our go-to-market playbooks, accompanied by value propositions, positioning frameworks, personas, buyer journeys, and content strategies. And finally, we're feeding a family of four, despite having left the shackles of corporate America. The cool thing about personas and positioning frameworks, by the way, is that they're the building blocks for business storytelling. Our strategic messaging foundation work was ultimately the key that enabled me to figure out how to rewrite storytelling for business. When our clients invested in our playbooks, they saw real results, and they still do. A mid-size IT services firm saw consistency and unity for all their efforts, from sales to marketing, their website, all the way through to their consulting practice. A corporate client saw over 40% increase in registrations for their event series. Another client saw campaign landing page improvements, both search, bringing people to the page, and then also page actions when people actually got there. The whole point of these frameworks was as useful tools that we could use with anyone and that people could use themselves to really help you and your product stand out, to make what you say and do interesting. I love helping our clients find a better way to connect with their customers. And I found all of this through storytelling. And it's really no surprise. Our brains are wired for it. Our society is built on it. And the good news is you don't need every single latest social media tool or platform to find success. Whatever platform you're using, you can use storytelling to make it better. It's that secret I'm about to share. In fact, it's 3 secrets. So one false belief that I've seen is that storytelling may be a powerful way to communicate. It may be entertaining, but it's too hard to apply to our business. Every time I try to use a hero's journey in my marketing, it's too complicated, too much of a lift. I have enough to worry about already. That leads to secret number 1, a quick and easy story hack to increase profitability without learning all of the nuances of storytelling. Another false belief we've seen is, okay, I'm sold on storytelling. I understand the frameworks, but I still can't create stories that work. My stories don't have a heart. I have so many product features and benefits to get across. I just can't find time to fit in realistic emotions that will make the story interesting, and I don't know how. Hence, secret number 2, a way to build and tell confident business stories that connect with the hearts and the minds of your customers. That leads me to the 3rd false belief that we see. Okay, I get it. I get all of that. I'm on board, but I just can't get the support or the funding. I don't have the political clout internally because I just can't show how storytelling is connecting to the business, or how all the stories that we need to tell can align with each other. So all those horses are pulling the wagon in one direction. And that leads us to secret number 3. Tell the right story to connect your audience to your product, move your customers to act, and get you the support that you need. Okay, so let's talk about secret number 1. Take out your pen and paper to take some notes, because we're going to walk you through the framework. I call it the 3D story framework. Remember, like the wheels and how I seek to avoid reinventing the wheel wherever possible? Well, on my hunt for the existing wheels, I found tons of fascinating information about storytelling born out of hundreds of years of story crafting. Hero's journey, overcoming the monster, save the cat, all that good stuff. But again, they were for entertainment purposes, because books and movies are just artifacts of what storytelling is. They're not the source. I couldn't find any really good how-tos for applying storytelling for business and marketing in a repeatable manner. I couldn't get the wheel I was looking for. I wanted a wheel that worked for the repeatable application of storytelling in business. Remember, those movie and book story models can be quite detailed. Joseph Campbell's like 10, 12, whopping 17 steps, right? All those different phrases like character arc and rising and falling action. You don't want to be worrying about that. Busy professionals don't want to worry about that, but they do want to take advantage of storytelling. And as we discussed, we're all subject to this curse of knowledge, coined by Chip and Dan Heath and made to stick. The curse makes it hard for non-experts to understand what we get, right? Storytelling's no different. And I ran the risk of getting sucked into the storytelling curse of knowledge. I knew I had to keep forging to unlock the secret. Besides, if I could develop some frameworks, I could even use them to speed up our client work. Forging frameworks can be tricky. When I worked at Microsoft, I created a patent for our customer engagement accelerator, along with Fred Studer and Kelly Rigotti. It was a technology designed to make Microsoft Dynamics even better. Creating a patent isn't easy. There's a lot you have to do, very detailed in the technical flow of information, processing it, managing it, storing it, amongst other things. And it was really tough. What really brought it together for us was looking at the patent through the lens of storytelling, through the eyes of our hero, our user. I was really lucky to have had this experience because it helped me realize how to crystallize what I needed to do with our frameworks at Go Narrative. And then to unlock the true power of story in a way that was really simple. The good news is you don't have the time to go through all the books and frameworks and take all that effort to learn about all this stuff, because I've done it for you, so you can shortcut the whole process. I also wanted to retain the interest and excitement of those entertainment frameworks and to ensure that what I created could help with strategy as much as crafting campaigns, training sales teams, or creating content. I truly believe that the right frameworks can take your storytelling destiny and put it into your own hands, even if you don't feel like you're a natural born storyteller and that your brain isn't wired in that way. The right frameworks can help you apply it in your business for marketing, leadership, product management, or even internal politics. Practical, useful frameworks. Where we live here in Seattle is surrounded by water. The archipelago of Puget Sound has over 170 islands, and it's been hot recently. My wife and I fantasized about living on one of these islands. Recently, we saw a property go on sale on Vashon Island. Here it is. It really did check a lot of the boxes. So we booked time to see it on the weekend, packed the kids in the car, and headed to the ferry terminal. A new construction, but it had issues. The sellers had run out of money and it showed. Now, I've owned 3 homes. My parents own a 450-year-old farmhouse. Houses take a lot of work, especially when they're 450 years old, made out of the same stones as Stonehenge. But if the foundation is good, a house can last for 450 years. The house on Vashon Island was peppered with warning signs that wasn't going to be the case. It reminded me of my mission to simplify storytelling for business and help you as a business person benefit from it without being an expert in storytelling. And it was going to really need 3 things. It needed a well-built foundation, as well as being simple and accessible as a tool. And it had to be easy to apply repeatably and practically. If you get your storytelling right, you don't have to worry as much about what channel or marketing method you're using. The right business storytelling framework can help you get attention, be heard, and result in the people who hear it taking action. Storytelling for action. You can also use it for internal alignment, for pitching your ideas to your boss, for exploring a new product strategy, for crafting product positioning, or even for defining the strategic narrative of your whole company. And of course, you can use it for your campaigns and your messaging. When you get the foundation right, you go beyond just the telling of storytelling. Campbell and Snyder wanted to help authors and filmmakers craft better stories with multiple characters, desires, transformations, and learnings, which is a noble cause. And I want to help you use storytelling in business. Your craft is your business. Your craft isn't storytelling. Even natural-born storytellers can benefit from structures designed for business that help with the practical application of storytelling. People should be able to enjoy living in a beautiful home without worrying about the state of the foundation, safe in the knowledge that it was well built. And by the way, that house eventually sold for 20% less than its list price in a market where everything is being driven up by bidding wars. Okay, are you ready for it? Are you ready for the framework? Let's take a look. So here it is. It's our first framework, the 3D framework, 3D story framework. It's practical and straightforward. It helps you see your story from all angles. Nike's Just Do It really inspired me, packing a whole bunch into 3 words, packing in all that important stuff in a way that represents more than just the 3 words. 3D stands for desire, difficulty, denouement. We'll get to that one in a second. In a nutshell, people, your hero, your customer, they want something. That's the desire. But nothing in life is easy, right? There's always things that stand in the way. That's the difficulty. And I chose that fancy French word, denouement, for that third D, because it means the untangling of the knot. What a wonderful metaphor. How was it untangled? With what? Was a specific approach or product used? Your product, right? In my story journey, I knew the importance of contrast, change, and transformation. I also knew that every business decision is a transformation, be it big or small. And if people could easily understand the why and how of another solution to such a transformation, they could also be persuaded to follow the same path, a path to purchase from you. So we designed our 3D story framework to be deceptively simple, a rich microcosm of nuances and details and context packed into those 3 simple words, just like Nike's Just Do It tagline. For all those years as a story interpreter for business, I knew that if you pulled on the correct threads, you'd extract what you needed to construct a story. A good story puts you in the center, and those 3 words do just that. They tease a transformation and present it in such a way that allows you to see every single detail from all those different perspectives. It should come as no surprise that we use this 3D story framework every single day in our own marketing, our sales conversations, even to understand the challenges that our clients have. For our clients, we use it for many things. But here's a great example of a landing page above the fold copy that utilizes the 3D framework. And we've got a whole formula for the landing pages themselves. We also use it as a practical tool to break down value propositions based on real customer stories in our workshops. We use it to create train the trainer guides with an outside-in perspective and to coach our clients quickly and easily on telling stories without the baggage of entertainment storytelling. While it may be true that we're all natural-born storytellers, it's also true that it's different spinning a yarn about something that happened in your day to constructing a strategic narrative for an energy compliance company. The latter is a little bit harder. I love this quote from Ben Horowitz because it really talks about this and drives this point home. Storytelling is important and it does take work. With our 3D framework, we've made that work a little bit easier. You have an easy on-ramp to understanding and applying storytelling every single day. You can literally start using it right now. I'm so excited in its simplicity because it means it's easier for you to remember and to practice it. That's what this is all about, practical application. I'd finally found a way to make business storytelling accessible to business people. Okay, great. You've got your story structure down and you're starting to riff out some stories. Stories need emotion. We have to feel a story. Remember earlier, I told you about the framework we developed to help infuse emotions into the business storytelling that you're doing? We're going to talk about our framework that helps with that now. I call it the Story Meat Method. Now, this may all be sounding good, but you've also been asking yourself if you can apply it in a way that really connects and moves customers to act. One thing we hear from folks is that they understand the power of storytelling, but they don't really feel confident creating stories without emotional punch. They say it's hard to humanize and create the proper tension in a way that connects with people. Now, when you follow the very detailed hero's journey, it does lead you through a process that gets you there. Calls to adventure, crossing thresholds, and so on. But it's no surprise business people tune out that stuff. let alone then struggle to apply storytelling in business with an emotional punch. So I experienced this in my time as a story interpreter. I was worried that the stories I crafted wouldn't have the emotional punch to really engage our audience. I agonized over it, and I don't want you to. When we delivered our first strategic narrative, I was on pins and needles. What would they think of the metaphor that I'd chosen for the eagle soaring? Would all that crafted to engage emotionally fall flat? Luckily, they loved it. There's a magical feeling I get from zeroing in on a narrative metaphor that works, it connects, that resonates. I was lucky enough that my grandmother lived in the same village as my parents in her twilight years. This meant I got to see her on my visits back from university. I struggled at university. Maybe it was my bright, shiny object syndrome. Maybe it was my ADHD and my dyslexia. Either way, I found it tough. One day on a visit back home, I stopped to see my gran for a cup of tea. Ain't no party like my nana's tea party. Some of you might get the Flight of the Conchords reference here. Matthew, she said, if degrees were easy, they would hand them out after A-levels, kind of the last 2 years equivalent of high school in the US. But she was right. It made me think of my mother's Forge story. And no, I didn't spill the beans to her. I kept the secret. I did keep my gran's comments in mind, though. Nothing worth working for is a handout. And if I could do the hard work, the forging for you, I could get you to story success more quickly. Entertainment story structures have a highly formal, detailed structure. And the problem I see with these highly formal, detailed structures is it hampers creativity as you struggle to check all the boxes of those frameworks. In business, this just distracts you from something critical to storytelling. It was during those early days of COVID that the importance of those right emotions in business stories really became obvious to me. I was doing my best along with everybody else to keep calm and carry on. I was on the hunt for a way to make sure that we respected the intense emotional landscape of the time. And, emotions are a big deal. They affect everything. Our family, for example, loves Star Wars, originals, prequels, sequels, toys. We have more Star Wars Lego than you could shake a stick at. I even met George Lucas twice, but that's another story. I remember reading an article about lightsaber battles in Star Wars and how the actors had to practice so hard because for many of them, sword fighting was a brand new experience. For a few, however, it wasn't. But each character brought their own inimitable style to their swordplay. It wasn't just parry, block, and slice. There was an art, an emotion to it, and each character is different. Here's Christopher Lee. He played the character of Count Dooku in Star Wars. Now, swordplay wasn't new for Christopher Lee. In fact, he played sword fighting roles many times before. For example, in 1973's The Three Musketeers, which you see here. So in his case, his classic, elegant style was integrated into his Star Wars character. To breathe life into a story, you must infuse technique and science with character, art, and emotion. Just like Christopher Lee breathed life into Count Dooku's lightsaber battling style, the place to start is by asking yourself, what truths in the transformation or change in the world is forcing on your customers? The good news is I've created a way for you to quickly add emotion to your stories. And better yet, you don't have to be a creative literary genius or award-winning director to do so. That's why we created the Story Meet method. You can pull this framework out and use it to infuse emotions into any story. It's your iceberg hack to bring emotions into business stories. Morals, essential emotions, and truths. What Meet enables is a quick way to connect to the things that people care about in their business. Morals shape and guide business culture, office locations, affiliations, donations, even collaboration culture within the company itself. Essential emotions ooze out of all interactions in business. Elation for success, fear for career snafus, excitement for ideation and collaboration. Truths frame up a business. Things are just a certain way sometimes. This can be affected by the industry, the founders, headquarter countries, and a lot more. When you hold something dear, think about your specific emotional response when it's threatened or transformed. Use the story meet method to meet your customers where they are. If you understand what moves people, you can craft things that result in action. Emotions are the key. With Meet, you don't need to maintain all of those steps of the hero's journey to bring emotions into your storytelling. Just start pulling at that thread with the story meet method, and you will unravel the complex cardigan of emotions in no time. Getting the emotions right in your storytelling builds empathy, which creates the conditions for engagement. I am so excited to be sharing these simple frameworks with you so that you can unlock the practical power of business storytelling. There's no greater feeling of success that I get than when we hear how we impact people's lives. When people like Hannah from Amplus say things like she says here, this quote is what we live for, and we absolutely love it. Remember earlier when I told you about the framework we developed to help tell the right stories, bring consistency to all those stories, help with internal alignment, support marketing, increase demand and sales, accelerating pipeline? Okay, I'm going to walk you through that framework now. We call it our TRIPS storytelling methodology. I love storytelling, and like you, I was committed to making it work. With that chief storyteller role, when it was offered to me, I was so excited. I thought I understood it at storytelling enough to bring its power into business, but I quickly found that my efforts were met with blank stares. Kurt von who? That's about the time I went to look for those business storytelling frameworks, but came up short. The problem was also that I just wasn't happy with what I was finding out about the importance of storytelling. A quick Google shows plenty of people explaining storytelling and how it works, even though the why of how our brains, even the why, I should say, of how our brains work with story. But there's precious little of the why of storytelling, let alone through actual stories themselves. Seriously, go Google storytelling. Hit I'm lucky. It's highly likely you'll land on this HubSpot article. Save it for later. Now, not to throw HubSpot under the bus, and they have so much great content. When you read it later, you'll notice a few things. Not only is it not structured as a story, there also isn't a story anywhere to be found in it. I'm sure you've realized now why I went on this mission, and I have a lot more work to do. The power of story goes far beyond the content of storytelling. We can actually use it to shape the world. I remember in January 2017, as I sat with my wife on the sofa talking about what to call the company, I landed on Go Narrative for a couple of reasons. First, I wanted to convey that action that storytelling drives, hence Go. But also, I realized that stories were these event components and that there was something bigger, that they laddered up to something, to a narrative. For example, your favorite movie includes a collection of smaller stories that accrue up to the bigger story or the narrative of the film itself. Stories and narratives contain important structures. And I learned that it's not just about the telling of stories, hence why we focus on narrative. The 3D story framework was great for helping business people tell the stories. The story meet framework was great to infuse that emotion. And I also knew that because there was this bigger thing, this narrative thing, that it wasn't just about storytelling. And that narrative is about the big picture. So I had two fundamental questions. Firstly, what was this golden thread that kind of tied all those stories together? This led to an even more profound question. How do you ensure the stories you're telling are the correct stories? I mean, stories that matter for the business and drive action in the business. In my early days of solving the business storytelling problem, I became hooked. I spent so much time geeking out in storytelling. You might recall how I kept running into problems trying to get the business and my colleagues to benefit from it because of the terminology and the curse of knowledge. Well, I remember sitting down with my general manager at the time and trying to go through the stages of the hero's journey. It didn't go well. I don't recommend trying to do it. You can almost taste the curse of knowledge, right? With these types of frameworks. And most business people are just too busy to remember all this on top of the products, marketing campaigns, sales plans, partner events, office politics. It's exhausting, right? You name it, so much, but you understand its value and you want to use it. The big question is, how do I get going? This is where the paradox of storytelling really manifests. What's this paradox you talk about, Matthew? Well, the paradox is the simple truth that storytelling isn't just storytelling. is the driving force that results in the telling of stories, is how our brain works, and precisely how it works in relation to getting on and getting along in society, as Will Storr says in The Science of Storytelling. But the paradox doesn't end there. Even with a thing that is so natural and so simple that we use it every day, just like salt, yet so tricky that application in business constantly results in that salt getting spilt. And here's the kicker of the paradox. As you learn more about it, you become subject to the curse of knowledge. Just as you're starting to get storytelling with all the complexity of the traditional entertainment frameworks, you realize you're falling into the expertise trap. This is one of the disadvantages, I should say, of trying to learn the breadth and depth of all of these entertainment story frameworks. I love how Mike Maddock cites the saying, you can't see the label from inside the jar. If you're too obsessed with the methodology, you can miss what is truly happening, especially when it's a complex methodology. It makes me think of the Buddhist practice that I learned through meditation, the idea of beginner's mind. Our very first client was a small technology business in California. We were crafting their strategic messaging foundation, including their strategic narrative, value prop, and positioning. At this time, I was still manually bridging the entertainment frameworks to business concepts with a heavy focus on strategic messaging, continuing to play that story interpreter role. If you think about your favorite movie again for a sec, there are multiple stories, right, that are happening that are all woven together into the narrative of the film. And that usually results in a moral or a metaphor that encapsulates all of it. In The Wizard of Oz, which we recently saw with the children, the narrative is that one's true purpose is found within oneself. There's no place like home, and Dorothy was there all along. The stories of the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion all support this narrative. They all had what they sought all along, right? Brains, heart, and courage. In business, when you're prospecting for the inputs to your narrative, you need to extract insights from employees, customers, partners, the founders. This enables you then to explore themes and connections. Then you can identify the transformation and how it relates to your company, products, and people. And then you can connect your narrative to that and really form it from it. Again, this is more than just storytelling. The biggest problem is that people see storytelling just for entertainment, maybe the occasional presentation. What they don't see is it's something deeply, deeply connected to the business. What if you had a way to guide your leadership team through the narrative elements in a language they understood? That's what I was able to uncover. A way to create a strategic narrative rooted in the business without having to memorize structures for entertainment. The framework is our TRIPS storytelling methodology. You might be familiar with this quote from Arthur C. Clarke: any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic. Well, I started using our narrative framework, and there was a magical feeling of getting to that goal, not just more quickly, but with more accuracy. Plus, it was in the correct language for our clients, but it was even more than that. It actually was a way for us to X-ray and see inside our clients' businesses from outside in. For someone who's been championing customers and outside-in thinking for decades, it made so much sense. If you could see the business, break it down in a framework rooted in storytelling, you would have the tool to create a narrative for business. There's a secret that ties all this together. Think of a brick wall. Now, imagine that the wall is not made up of all these individual bricks, but rather a single tall, thin wall made of fired clay. Such a wall is never made. Why? It's weak. When you have multiple bricks connected by mortar, it's strong. It's to do with how the forces exert on each brick, on all the others around it. It enhances its strength. And a narrative is like mortar. It holds all your stories together, and together they are stronger. You undoubtedly have an idea about how you can help your prospective customers and what you can do for them. That's innovation fuel right there. It's what companies are founded on, finding a better way to get a job done. It's important not to forget the why. All these things are tied together with a golden thread, all while framing how you can help. When we untangle the knot in the denouement of the 3D story framework, we find out how a customer went through their story and found success. The fact is, your company's strategy is deeply linked to your story. As the great Ben Horowitz said, in good companies, the story and the strategy are the same thing. He goes on to say that the output of all this, all the strategy, all the execution, is the story. A strategy without a story is an incomplete strategy. Is your strategy incomplete? Well, with the TRIP storytelling methodology, we can ensure that those stories have a common foundation, but also are deeply connected to the business. TRIPS is an acronym. Okay, what does it stand for? T is for transformation. What change is going on in the world? How is it affecting companies, governments, people? How is it affecting your customer? This is the why that you're embarking on. It's why you invented your product or developed your new business plan or crafted that marketing campaign. You're addressing this transformation. R is reasons to believe. There's a head and a heart to it. The head, what are the market facts, trends, data that support or provide evidence of the transformation? And then the heart is the aspirational or inspirational things that drive an interest for a person, the opportunity cost or opportunity risk of not tackling the transformation. I is innovation, your secret sauce, a transformation winning tool. Why you, your product or company. P is problems. That transformation imposes on the world, right? Problems that must be overcome to deal with the transformation. Problems along the way. There's problems. There's always problems. What are those? S is for stories. Stories from the world that articulate the transformation. Stories of social proof that show how you can help. And also anecdotes or metaphors that represent that transformation and the act of overcoming it. Now, the reality is all this can happen naturally. Not all the time, but it can. When entrepreneurs are so passionate about solving a big, hairy problem, they will often and likely go through these steps unconsciously. It's why unicorns exist. But again, without a specific approach, it's rolling of the dice. I didn't even really invent this methodology. I discovered it or uncovered it. In a way, not too dissimilar from what Joseph Campbell went through when he went through centuries of literature to see the patterns. And it was through this positioning and messaging work and story interpreting, I should say, that I discovered the patterns of stories and narratives in business. So through that work and standing on the shoulders of the giants and masters like Campbell, I was able to then crystallize a business-focused framework, all of which benefited from the underlying brain and society reasons for why all of this stuff works in the first place. Then I codified it so you can use it repeatedly as a guide. Now, as I said, this process can happen naturally, but it doesn't mean it will. You can always roll the dice, but you don't have to. You no longer need to cross your fingers and pray that you have the secret to doing it, because now you have that secret and you can do it every time. When you craft narratives of the TRIP storytelling methodology, you will frame your strategy for the transformation and how it relates to the market, and you will harvest the proper inputs for your stories. Super important. You will also have a golden thread that ties everything together, to break down the topic, to put it in context, to understand the drivers and the blockers, to connect with empathy, and create and show how you can take them to the promised land. You can also help them realize what that transformation is. Then with our 3D story framework, you can actually go out and create the stories that you need to tell using that raw material. You can repeatedly do it in a consistent way. And with the story meat method, you can then find the right emotions to create for your stories and to put into your stories to help connect with people and move them to act. And then, of course, we put the TRIP storytelling framework at the heart of everything we do. It's our North Star. It helps us maintain an outside-in focus and bring consistency and repeatability to everything we do. It's the foundation of our strategic narrative work. In our business, we use it internally and externally. Internally, we use it to shape our own narrative and guide the work we do for clients. Externally, we use it to diagnose a new client, to craft our materials we create for them, and the coaching sessions that we run, and it provides a baseline for creating their strategic narrative. For example, we'll run a workshop with a client to extract all their inputs for each of the elements. Then we'll test, research, and expand on those concepts. We use this to then identify cultural and meta-narratives that can be used as narrative metaphors to accelerate understanding. These narrative metaphors, along with that foundation and those stories based on our 3D story framework, are then used to craft that strategic narrative. Customers have achieved things like the 40% increase in registrations for their event series by implementing our complete approach. It's our golden thread. After we applied our frameworks, we saw our deals 10x in size. These engagements included multiple storytelling services and, of course, our favorite deliverable, the strategic narrative. I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled. Love helping you with this. So my journey with storytelling went from stories and hero's journey to brain science and the cogs of society. I learned that storytelling wasn't even just to do with the telling of stories or even just a way of being interesting and engaging. I learned that there is a process that is fundamentally linked to how our brain works and how we see the world, how we communicate, and even the problem solving on which we embark. It fuels our lives and the businesses we run. I also learned how to align narratives to business and create a narrative that connects to a human understanding of the world as a bridge to your product or service. I learned how to use these narratives to intentionally create stories that align and inspire people to act. Now, you have the secret to unlock storytelling success for business. You'll create energy and interest for your program, your campaign, even your storytelling initiative itself. You'll build alignment and get people on board. It's on that energy you can then engineer large-scale, meaningful narratives and campaigns that convert and trigger the right mix of hormone release at scale. This is storytelling for action. So let me ask you a question. If you did everything in step 1, got telling stories better, everything in step 2, infused that emotion to your stories, and everything in step 3, created that alignment to the business and made sure all those stories were aligned and created that internal alignment, do you think you could drive more demand and accelerate your sales pipe and find more success? How many of you are feeling excited right now? Exciting stuff, right? Well, also, how many of you feel like you're overwhelmed because you recovered so much? Drinking from the hot fire hose, am I right? I get it. It's impossible to go through everything in a 60-minute presentation. I had some presentation coaching once where the guy basically said, you can't cover everything in 60 minutes, but you can get them to take an action, get committed on that journey. And I hope that's what you'll realize that you can do today. And you know what? Stories are the same. It's about getting people to take that next action. And that's why you want to sprinkle it across everything you do in your business to constantly create that forward motion. And, we're here to help if you need some help. So that's why we created and are launching the Storytelling for Action pack. And here it is. So you can be one of the first people to get access to Storytelling for Action. Sign up at this link. That's all you need to start applying storytelling in business. It includes 6 playbooks, a 12-part course covering all the elements of our frameworks and how to apply, templates that you can use with your team, and lifetime access to our virtual clinic. Plus, we're going to throw in a bonus customer advocacy pack to help you build your customer advocacy programs. So our mission is to help you harness the power of storytelling for business without relying on entertainment storytelling frameworks. So that is what we're out to do and to help you with today and in the future. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited for Storytelling for Action. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes to answer questions, but don't worry, if you can't think of any right now, we'll be back at the same time next week. Come get a refresher, ask your questions then, or reach out to us. Okay, so let's see what questions do we have here. So why don't you have heroes or things like that in your frameworks? It's because it's embedded in desire. That was the whole point of the simple frameworks, is we didn't want to have too many terms, too much complexity, having to think about these things. Yet when you have something inside something, it's implicit and it's required for success. So if I say desire, that instantly makes you think, well, there's got to be a person who has the desire, right? And you probably think about yourself initially when you're modeling that in your mind. So that's why we don't get into that level of detail, talking about heroes and so much in our frameworks. Okay, let's see. What's the difference between transformation and change? Very similar. We tend to use transformation as that big picture. Change can be about steps along the journey, kind of the micro. So that's a way to think about that. What do I need to remember about story arcs, hero's journey, and all that stuff? You don't. They work great for entertainment, but not for business. You could spend time being a story interpreter and try and do that as well. More power to you. Go spend the next 10 years like I've done, figuring out how to do it in an effective way repeatedly. Or you can just use our frameworks. We've already done the work for you. You mentioned movies and films a lot. For someone that says businesses don't need that approach. Yes, because the entertainment industry is what you're familiar with, and it serves as a metaphor to help me get you to understanding quicker. And you know what? They all come from the same place, right? They're all artifacts, business storytelling, entertainment storytelling. But the key is you don't have to use the entertainment structures. You can use the business structures instead. What's the biggest mistake people make in storytelling? There's kind of two, really. One is not understanding it enough to use it effectively, like that CMO example. And people think they're using it and they're not, and they're leaving money on the table, kind of thing that we hear often in business. And the second big thing is pursuing entertainment structures and getting lost, right? Getting put off, trying to apply it and getting frustrated, and then not adding that skill set to your capabilities. So those are some of the big ones. And let's see, I think that was it. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you have taken something away, that you've got some inspiration. You've got the frameworks now. So go and start using them. Let me know how it gets on. Reach out. Let's have a conversation about this. And of course, make sure you sign up for Storytelling for Action. And as a bonus of that, you'll also get our weekly storytelling tips newsletter. We share a ton of content trying to help you apply storytelling to business. Loads of really great stuff. Go check out our blog as well. There's loads of resources up there. And we are excited to be on the business storytelling journey with you. We'll speak very soon. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope you took something away from today. Cheers.